Good evening, everyone. I'd ask that first cell phones off or vibrate.
Get everybody go.
Thank you, and I'd like to welcome you to the City Council workshop of Satellite Beach. Today is August 28, 2012. The time is approximately 6 p.m., and I'd like to turn it over to Councilwoman Dean.
Moment of silence, please. Amen. And the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Like I say, I'd like to welcome you to this workshop, and before I start, I'd like to thank the Vice Mayor for filling in and conducting a meeting last week. Thank you, a 4.5-hour meeting, and you did a great job. And I'd like to thank the members of the council, Councilwoman Dean and Councilman Billman, and I think Lloyd was here, or he was not, for that meeting. Today is a continuation of that meeting to lead us to a first public hearing, which would be next Wednesday, the 5th of September, and then the second public hearing on the 19th. So we have one action item on the workshop, and it's the budget adjustments, additions, deletions, everything that's happened since the last meeting. And good evening, Ann.
Good evening. First, I'd like to get a Beachcaster update from Dana Billman. She's here to report.
All right.
Dana Billman, resident. The Beachcaster's coming along. Obviously, we've had a little hiccup. I'm sure you're all aware of it. We had decided we were going to advertise, and we had gone out to businesses. We'd actually had 2 that had come in to advertise. We had 5 others that had indicated that their interest and that they were bringing their ads in. And we had a citizen that decided that the ads were also a place for freedom or free speech. So the city manager and the city attorney decided that probably it was a better idea for us not to advertise in the Beachcaster. So we have contacted the businesses who were going to advertise, let them know what the situation was, and that we'll be unable to accept ads. The city manager has been able to come up with some funds that will be able to cover the cost that the ads were going to cost, so we will be able to get this Beachcaster out. In the future, obviously, we're going to have to look at some other issues. We've gone back, we're going to talk with the attorney about the subscriptions, go back to investigating that for the hard copies, those type of things, since this isn't going to be an avenue that's available to us. We obviously had our candidates that qualified. We've all been in contact with them. They understand they're going to be submitting articles. Originally, we had the date that was on the 28th, which was today. We had one candidate that had some personal issues and was not able to meet that, so we had extended it to the 30th. So everybody will have to have their articles in by the 30th. They'll be providing their own pictures. And let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The other thing is that we will be getting it on. I'm not sure, we haven't worked out quite exactly how it's all going to get on the website, but there'll be an expanded version on the website. The candidates we're given 150 to 170 words per minute for the hard copy. Not per minute, but per article on the hard copy. On the website, they'll actually have 300, so they can expand a little bit on what they want to say. A lot of the council members, as you know, a lot of the departments had to scale their articles down because they were also limited to 150, so we'll be able to scale those back. There's some information or expanding on some of the stuff they had, so we'll do that. And then you guys obviously can have your expanded articles in. Is there any questions?
No, but thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So you said we can expand our articles to 150 since we were limited to, to 170 since we were limited to 150?
Yeah, and like a lot of people, the different
Because I had a
departments.
hard time getting it. To
Right,
150, but
and a lot of people did. So, but unfortunately with the space constraints, we couldn't get more in there. But on the web, we obviously have more space. So what we're asking is the people stick with, you know, what the topic is. I mean, I guess we can expand out. We hadn't really discussed that. But most people, the articles they originally submitted were much larger than what we were able to put in.
As far as the advertisements, I know we beat this horse to death.
Actually, at a workshop, we're not supposed to discuss anything except what's on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Well, can you bring it back to the agenda next meeting so we can discuss the advertisement?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay. Ann?
Brenda? The first and only slide. It's a little bit tiny, but these are the budget adjustments as from last time. And I'm going to ask Brenda specifically, you can see the adjustments for 828 in the second to the far right, and then just one to the left. It says adjustments for 828. And if you go down the column to other revenue sources, that is the transfer in from capital assets on page 12. There was some question from council about that, and Brenda's going to explain that.
Can you see it? Yeah. Those items were listed on page 12 as other revenue sources, and they were transfer in from the capital asset fund. Council had issues with that, and instead of going forward, I just took those out, but they were a recommendation from KPEG and from the IT staff member who had recommended the replacement, and I also have the KPEG recommendation here, their entire report, actually from page 74 to 77 of the KPEG report recommending the replacement of computers. But from the IT person himself, he had said to replace up to 10 computers, which I had included in the proposed budget at the workshop of 8.8. All of the items, all of the little computers that were put in initially totaled up to 8,600, and then I added for the council's laptops to total up to the $11,800. So that amount of money I had transferred in from capital assets fund because the initial budgets that I received from the respective departments did not include that amount because IT is under my department and the KPEG's recommendations were not included in the respective departments. So I received this recommendation from my IT person, and along with the recommendations from KPEG, I included that in there since it was not included in the initial budgets from their departments. I incorporated the transfer in from the capital assets fund to cover those expenditures. And since there was a problem with that from the council the last budget workshop on 8/23, I removed that. Those funds are now covered by other items which we will cover later on in this workshop. Okay?
Okay, now, of course, we're talking in the revenue portion there of the general fund. Now, if you move down to expenditures, and it is it says general fund in the far left column, adjusted budget, 823, and then additional adjustments that were brought up at the workshop. If you're down in expenditures, the top row there is legislative, and we have removed the $2,000 for the council tablets. So that has been removed. Also in general government services, there is $481, which is for the mayor's cell phone there that has been removed.
It was a meeting.
You did. And if you move down that column, recreation, 1650 was removed. Half of the poopy bags were taken out, and that is a total of $1,050. Also, a reduction in the copy expense is $600 in that location. And I know that Carrie is going to be working on reducing the number of, I think she reduced it from 20 pages to 16 pages, and she is going to be gradually reducing that, as we talked about, to accommodate some other cuts in the printing cost and the copying cost. She's already reduced quite a bit by going with a different supplier, as well as reducing 4 of 20 pages. And that totals $4,131. Now, if you go to 2 more columns to the right, adjustments for 828, and you go into the expenditure column for general government services, we have placed the strategic plan, because there was a concern with the strategic plan being placed, what was that, in capital assets?
Yes, and you'll see that down at the bottom where the entire $25,000 was removed out of capital assets.
Correct. And instead, we're budgeting for $5,000. Hopefully, some people have said they would help pro bono, and I think we have the talent to be able to do that. Under police, and that's in the next line item, is removal of 2 computers for $1,200. Under fire, equipment maintenance, that is contingency equipment maintenance, has been removed. Building and zoning, I am recommending, instead of the $25,000 for the planner, I'm recommending $15,000, and that is the $10,000 reduction there for planner services. Under recreation, there is a reduction of 1 computer for $600, and the $81, which is another addition to reserves. Now that shows a total of adjustment of $7,719. Is there anything you want to add on that, Brenda?
That covers it completely.
Now, one thing that needs to be mentioned, and all of you had received information regarding the health insurance, and Wayne Helsby had given his legal opinion that the 50-50 was appropriate, that there was no problem with that. So there you notice on the second to the last line, just above reserves, insurance savings stays in there at $41,277, and that includes going to 50-50. In other words, all employees receive 100% of their health benefits, and then members of the family, it's a 50-50 split there, and there's a savings there to the city. And I think the maximum addition, just so you know, no matter how many members you have in your family, is approximately $76 a month. That would be the additional that the family of employees for their family would be paying, no matter how many members of the family there are. And then, of course, there was also the savings, because we had budgeted in an 8% increase in health insurance, but that did not materialize because there was no increase whatsoever. So that is the total of $41,277 reflects those 2 aspects of savings. And I'm trying to... Was there anything else, Brendan, that you can see there, I think?
Well, if we went below the general fund and we went to capital assets, we removed both of those 2 items, and the balance goes into reserves. And that can be reallocated to any additional computers or whatever, or just remain in reserves.
What's the total amount in reserves then? Is it the 116,920?
117,001.
That's the
Does
general
that include
fund.
the 36,850?
No, that is capital assets fund is what I was speaking of.
Okay.
For the 36,000, but the 117 is for the general fund.
The general,
Right.
okay.
Yes.
Exactly, and we're required to put 116,920 in there.
And the 36,8 is still available if police department really needs those 2 computers, or they need MDTs or something,
Yes.
that we could take it from there.
Yes.
Okay.
Or if we don't use it at the end of the year, we can transfer it into reserves, correct?
Well, that's where it's
That's where it's
placed
going
right
right now?
now. Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's why it's sitting down there at the bottom?
Has reserves.
Because it's out of Fund 150, it's just not all in the lines and everything. So 36,850 is going to go in reserves, whereas 117,001 is coming out of the general fund into reserves.
No. That's staying in reserves in the general fund. The lower portion is capital assets fund.
Okay.
And that 36,000 will go in reserves of the capital
Okay.
assets fund.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't want to make
Got
it
it.
confusing.
Got it.
Did we ever look into why the banking fees were $11,000 a year, plus or minus?
You had looked into that, Brenda, every year you're checking on the banking fees, is that correct?
And almost quarterly.
Quarterly?
Most finance directors compare notes with other banks and how they're doing it, and it has to do with the FDIC insurance. They're getting a lot of money for coverage, and most banks are doing the same thing.
And has that been increasing then?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
What's our savings, Brenda? Did you calculate our, well, you must have, because you got the final number. The savings going from 50/50 to 60/40, what's the annual savings?
A little over 24,000.
And how many years we've been doing that, not in accordance with the policy? Since you've been here, you said last time.
Prior to my tenure.
And how long you been here?
17 years.
Do you have any feel for how long we've been doing that beforehand? Just from going through past budgets that you may have gone through before, as you got here to...
No, sir.
Thanks.
I have a question, because we talked a little bit about the first responder money that goes to pay for, I think it's about $19,000 that comes in from the county. Where does that show up as a revenue source? In miscellaneous?
First responder. Well, Brenda's looking for that. I'm sure you also saw Mr. Helsby's comments on furlough. That we're going to put that one to bed. We're going to leave that one alone because of the issues of, I think because it was a gift, so to speak, of the department heads to essentially give to those who were making $49,500 or less.
And who had the merit to get it.
And it was a merit bonus, that's correct. But the problem is, again, these things have to be brought before the union. Even though they would probably permit that to happen, it's just another process that we have to go through. And maybe we'll be able to look at that as we go through negotiations, and still may be able to put that into play. But I think there was not that type of a problem with exempt employees, but it became more and more complicated.
I apologize. My computer went down in the storm yesterday, so I didn't get to see any emails today. But I think that a furlough policy needs to be written in the personnel policy if we're ever going to.
I think you're right.
I think it becomes a sticky.
And that just gets back to the whole personnel policy has to
You're
be
right,
rewritten.
absolutely.
I do. Go ahead.
The first responder money, it's $42,610, and it's on page 10.
Well, that's a big difference between $19,000 that was.
It's always been about, I think it's been 42, 47.
Because I specifically asked the question, and they said it was about $19,000.
I think first responder. It's always vulnerable to, when we get to the county budget. The county has not discussed their budget yet.
I know it's been an issue, but I don't know what's,
Yeah.
I know the first responder money has been an issue.
I do have a question for the council, and it has to do with the furlough money and everything, and if you discussed it, please let me know, and I won't bring it up, but when we take the furlough money and we stop this, we don't offer any raises to anyone. And I think we are going rollback minus a little bit. Did you discuss, and if you had any raises for people making less than 49.5, any 1% is the money that, I know that we might have, that was about 49,000. Maybe something to look at in April, maybe something if you have some money left over, because I think that we had in the budget that we were going to provide a 1% pay bonus for those that merited it. That is now, there is nothing available. It's been 4 years. Is there anything that we can consider to even put on the table to supplement the 53, I think there's about 53 employees of the city that, and I know that everyone is hurting, but they're probably hurting too. So is it, did you discuss any of that? And the furloughs just came off the table this afternoon. So I don't think you discussed it. Is there anything that have you thought about in the budget that we can put back for something? Would you consider it in April? I mean, would you want to consider it? No?
No, not when I hear from constituents who are losing jobs and getting pay cuts of their own.
But it's been 4 years. Is there any other way we can repay?
Well,
Or we could.
I have to be honest
complement?
with the situation with the transfer back or repayment of the CRA. We're in a sticky situation budget-wise, and we're paying back 35 grand back to the CRA when I think technically we should be paying 200,000 back, and I think we just need to get our feet on level ground before we consider that. I mean, we just talked a couple weeks ago about layoffs, and I know that was a sticky issue with me. I don't like to see that, and I'm not saying I'm not opposed to ever giving COLAs or merit raises. I just think at this time we
Well, last year at some time we came up with the 20 hours.
it was 20-hour comp time.
That may come up in the future, and you guys.
I was going to say, because we did grant comp time, which in effect is a raise.
And I
mean,
do
it is
have to
money
say,
out
and
of-
I've
it is money out of
argued,
citizens'
I've kind of
pockets.
argued about the furlough all along because it is, even if you take voluntary furlough, you're entitled to unemployment in Florida. And then ultimately it will cost the city money, and there's wage and hour issues with it. But I think just to go below $49,000, which we're assuming is the cost of living in Brevard County, is very arbitrary and discriminatory anyway. And if we're going to have a pool of merit, it needs to be for everybody across the board based on merit, not just based on a salary.
I did want to read this. This was from Attorney Helsby. You also inquired as to whether a department head who takes 5 days of furlough time in the next fiscal year spread throughout the year would be entitled to receive unemployment compensation for the time out of work. The answer is no. So, and that's pursuant to Section
That's the
443.
state of Florida?
That is correct. Florida statutes. So, and if you didn't get this, I did send it, and if you need another copy, just let me know.
I didn't get it because my computer's been down.
Okay.
So there's, and your rationale for taking it off?
Well, the next sheet that was sent to me is, essentially this. Giving a raise of this nature cannot be done unilaterally for the FOP contract covered employees. It has to be negotiated with the union. And see, that's where we get into this issue that you can't, it gets to be very, very sticky. So, and it's not that FOP wouldn't agree to it, but the point is, we don't, we have to go through the process. And so, right at this point in time,
Too hard. Well,
Did they mention, because again, my computer's been down, did they mention anything about the fire department because of the status quo issue?
well, what it says here, the fire department employees recently unionized. The city, as I've written to you previously, must keep the status quo for them during the pendency of negotiation with the IAFF for a contract. The standard is, quote, what would the employees reasonably come to expect if the city's intent is to implement the 1% merit increase or bonus for all city employees making under 49.5. There's a strong argument by the IAFF represented employees making under that amount that they would expect to receive the same amount, which wouldn't be a problem. But again, some are not going to be receiving it too that make over that amount, and you've talked about that, and that can be a problem.
Well, I'd just like to say, I do thank the department heads for offering that. I think with one union, one negotiating union, and general employees, it just may be too difficult. Once we have that all together,
Right.
it would be easier to sit down and discuss it. I
That's correct.
You're dealing with three different factions, which gets very
Right.
tenuous.
It's not to say it won't happen, it just is not a good time to do it right now.
And then I do have a question, because I did have a computer a few days ago, or last Friday, from Mr. Helsby that regarding the health benefits. And he said that this requirement for the 50/50 was embodied in the city's personnel policies. For the life of me, I can't find it in the city's personnel policies. And I'm concerned also that 50, I don't know, can someone explain to me how we ended up at 60/40 and when? Because again, if you decrease, I'm concerned we have a labor issue.
I think
Well-
we've got all the same people here we did last time. We asked that same question. No one had the answer.
He looked at the FOP contract as well, and he said with regard to employees not covered by FOP and not in the city's fire department who recently voted to unionize, the city would legally be able to require the 50/50 split, as the city's policies clearly require this split, and the city is free to abide by the precise language of those policies at any time. In other words, it's there, and for whatever reason as to why it was not implemented, it is still part and parcel. And I did send that information out as well. So you know, maybe you did not receive that. And if you don't, again, let me know and I will send that out to you.
I'm just cautious about that decreasing from a 60/40. This is just for the record, in my opinion, to a 50/50. I know it's in the union contract. I have gone through the union contract, but I don't see the requirement in the city's personnel policies. This personnel policy has just been another issue that's just sticking it to us every time regarding all kinds of issues. But I'm just afraid we might have an issue on our hands.
Well, Mr. Helsby was actually very confident about this and very clear because looking at all of this. So, you know, this is his legal opinion.
No, I understand.
He
Yeah.
was confident across the board,
Yes, he was.
non-represented, represented, and potentially to be represented.
Correct. Exactly.
Across the board, that
That
was
is
legal.
correct.
So what's next?
I'm going to go public opinion. I just wanted to, when you go 50/50, 60/40, a family will have an increase taken out of $76 or $900 a year.
Well, yes, and I don't know, I think it's if husband and wife, it would be less, and maybe one child, I don't know how it steps up on that. You would know more than I.
The family is the most expensive.
Right, family would be so.
But as we've discussed, and we have discussed, this is not something that we're implementing. This is something that should have been implemented. So it's something that, for the past years, it's been saving 900. I mean, I hate to look at it like that, but it's not a tax, it's not a reduction in pay, although it will see like that. But it's just fixing it from 60/40 to 50/50.
And it is interesting to look at other municipalities, and none of them are 60/40. None.
They're either 50/50 or different.
Correct.
or less. Okay. At this time, I'd like to open this workshop to public opinion. And you do have 3 minutes. If you could state your name and if you are a resident. For tonight, I'd like the residents to speak first. Residents of Satellite Beach, since we are discussing, and then we'll have the non-residents speak after that. So please, we have 3 minutes. We have some adjustments made. If you'd like to discuss to keep the mayor's cell phone, that would be fine. No, I'm just kidding. That is, but if you, a couple of things, the strategic plan, anything, and then we're getting ready. This is a workshop. So let's workshop it, and we'll get it ready for next week. So public opinion, please.
Short meeting.
Wow. Well, thank you. Does it, Ron, are you in the back? I didn't see you. Come on. And then Pat, you'll be next.
Thank you.
I should have gone. Well, actually, this is pretty. Can we just do that?
Good evening, council and everyone. Roger Gudis, resident. I look at the capital asset fund, and I know there's a reduction for $36,000. But if you look carefully at that $36,000 reduction, that's simply a reduction that offsets that was revenues transferred out of the reserve. So in essence, the whole capital asset fund, including reserves, was bled. Now this is putting back $36,000. We have other items in the capital asset fund that are being spent, and as was discussed last week, that perhaps we should have a hold on anything leaving the capital asset funds, especially computers, since we have a technology problem with the police department. We have mandates coming up. I'm not sure the $36,000 is going to be sufficient for them to initialize a contract, if need be, prior to the current fiscal year end. And we're going to get into reallocating resources, amending the budget. Maybe that is what's going to happen. I do not like amending the budgets. I have one more. That's a clarity issue there. I have one more issue here. Well, several actually, if I have time. One being, we have an adjustment coming forward for the salaries and the furloughs. Be nice to see a schedule that outlines the effects prior to a meeting, not after the fact. And I know we're under crunch time for September 4th or 5th to have a meeting. Next, last year we went through the budget process and we had a massive adjustment for the final budget. I'm not going to discuss that number at this point. Are we at the point where there's not going to be a surprise to where we're going to have something show up that's going to relate to amending the budget, and it's going to be a surprise? I'd like council to consider that, including staff. I know there's an item out there for the fuel charge, the gas tax that is out there. Is that the correct amount going through? And any increases that are thought of going forward with setting the millage rate, I think council should take an approach and have it go to reserves, and should there be a need for such funds, then it should go through council notice or council notation or council approval because of the last prior years, the bleeding of the reserve funds. And I propose going forward that council consider on a quarterly basis for current year financials to get from staff a comparison between budget and actual results. This has been something that was said through KPEG, and I will stand by that.
Thank you. Ron, I'll let you go. You're probably about 4 minutes now.
Okay, then in writing the rest of it.
Sorry, thank you. Pat? He does make some good points, though, and we would like to look at the fuel tax, just to make sure that it's figured. I think, Alan, you probably had a hand in that, the fuel tax. We'll just...
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Pat.
It's been a long time since I sat behind that desk, but I still receive phone calls asking about city policies and codes and that sort of thing. The most common one today, not just today, to date, has been, if you reduce taxes, how much of a savings is it going to mean to me? If you were to consider a reduction of $1 million, it would be about the equivalent to an average resident, average household, of about 7 gallons of gas a month. That ain't very much. And that's $1 million reduction. I don't know how you could do that. Sure you could, but I'm not sure how. But the other thing is, I would ask you to go back to the audio recording or the video from the last budget meeting. My own personal perception is that the finance director took more of a beating than she should have. I think personally she was mistreated by this council. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Any other public comment, citizens? Any non-residents of Satellite Beach who would like to speak? All right, I'm going to bring it back to the council. There were a couple of things. Fuel tax, if we have, I guess, the surprise is, as I understand, anything that's going to jump up and you got a pretty good...
Christine on the fuel tax. I deal with straight fuel, so the taxes on those fuels, I give Christine a report, and Christine turns a report into the state, and then taxes come back from the state via those reports. So monthly, she gets the reports, and I don't know how those numbers actually work out, because that's kind of out of my...
Okay, so have a good, you okay, Brenda, with that? Okay, thank you. And then the other one was computers for the police department. Jeff, you have some things coming up 2013, I know, that you have state mandatory items that you have to do. Chief? 2014. 2014? Okay, you already discussed this?
Yeah, we discussed it last meeting.
Sorry, okay. That's it.
And Jeff and I talked today, and he gave me some information, and we're really looking at about $240,000 if you want to get a decent RMS. Is that correct?
It's certainly not the highest, but it's not the absolute.
So you're looking at $240,000.
Okay.
So it's not cobbled together, right? Because the lower figure was, like you say, not really acceptable. And yet you could build on this one, is that right? What was that, the CIT? Was that the one we talked about?
CIS.
CIS? Okay.
It's just the difference between an older company that's playing catch up, that's piecemealing and trying to keep up with technology, as opposed to a company that is on the cutting edge of technology, and all their future updates are all included.
Yeah, and this is just another example of why we need a capital improvement fund in the city. Capital improvement plan.
And we are working on that, and actually, there is one, but it's a little bit ancient. And the other issue is, some cities have another dedicated source of revenue, too. What we've got is a capital assets with utility, funded by utility taxes, and then we have the stormwater fund, which is funded by the non-ad valorem stormwater fee. You know, some cities also have, and I'm not suggesting it, I'm just saying it, that they also have another tax, whether it's on water or whatever, to fund possibly, you know, some other assets that they're looking at. And I'm not suggesting that, I'm just saying we can have a capital improvement plan, but then the question is, where's the revenue coming from that? And that is the question.
From the conference, I think that Communications taxes, you can look at yearly, but the utilities, you can look at quarterly. So if you get to that point, you could look.
No, you know, I'm not going to bring this thing up, this sticky subject, the CRA. We have the money, you know, and we transfer. We seem to be like always living on the edge and spending every penny we have, and particularly borrowing from the CRA. So we really just need to buckle our belt, chisel away, and do a better job, and be fiscally responsible for the taxpayers' money. That's all there is to it. And I don't believe in additional taxes, whether they're ad valorem or not ad valorem, and we just need to do a better job and keep chiseling away. And it breaks my heart that we have to cut the health benefit. I would rather see other things cut, bottles of water, things like that, that we could seriously live without other than health benefits. But, you know, if that's the recommendation, that's fine. And I know that we're probably out of whack with what reality is in the real world with the 60-40. And probably 100%. I know that's not reality, but you know, we just need to do a better job. And I'm personally looking forward to next year and doing an even better job and going line by line. I do have a recommendation, though. I would prefer next year during the workshops that we sit one-on-one with each department head and go line by line, because it was a big learning curve for me and a lot to take in. And I still feel like I'm missing a lot of items where we could have adjusted the budget, and every penny counts.
It does.
And having a updated personnel policy next year, and having a capital improvement plan that we can refer to and look into the 3 to 5 year requirements for the departments will be a big help.
Right, and even a 10-year too.
10-year.
Yeah.
Well, I know Chief's got his 3 to 5 year plan, and both the chiefs, and I think probably most of the department heads have a 3 to 5 year plan of some sort.
They do.
And we just need to integrate that into the personnel and equipment. Not saying personnel or capital assets, but the equipment part of it would go into the capital assets, capital improvement plan, and we would then have something to look at as we're putting together the budget.
And before we adjourn, could you give me the proposed millage rate that will be in the budget on next week?
The proposed millage rate is rollback rate minus 0.5%, which is 8.3559.
Okay, rollback minus 0.5.
That is correct.
Very good.
And I just want to say too, and this was discussed at the last workshop, that we are going to be looking at this just because as the budget process completes itself, so to speak, on the 19th of September, that doesn't mean we're stopping looking at what we need to be doing to be efficient, you know, and I think that's a very important thing to know, too.
I did. All right, I'd just like to remind the council that we are back in uniform next week on the 5th. Sorry.
I've got one more potential item. I don't know if it's appropriate, but it came up during these discussions, so I don't know if a continuation of the discussion is appropriate or not, but the 175, 185 explanation. Is that appropriate at this time?
Well, Jim Malucki met with us on Friday. So what we had talked about is that he would come and give his findings to council. And then the question is when. When you look at September 5th, that is going to be quite the meeting, because not only is that budget, but we have to do the sign moratorium issue, and we also have to do ordinance, and then we, if so, or discussion, and then we have the comp plan by Jim LaRue. So that's going to be a pretty heavy meeting. So do you want to look at the next council meeting on the 7th and the 19th?
As far as I'm concerned, as long as he is comfortable that we are doing it right now, that we are doing it correctly now, that's really all I care about, so we can get the budget out of the way.
It is correct.
Okay, so the way we're doing it now is correct.
Correct.
Okay, and Jim LaRue is a mandatory meeting. He has to come back on the 5th?
Yes. That's the comp plan.
Why is it mandatory?
Well, we have to get moving with the Patrick Air Force Base and so on. We have to get that done in a particular time frame, and that is that's why this makes it a imperative issue to get it done in an extremely timely fashion.
It's going to be
It's going to be.
all right. For your lunch. First public hearing on this budget will be on on the 5th of September, starting at 6 o'clock. Anything else, council?
I do have a question. We will get a final budget, correct?
Indeed you will. You're going to have the whole enchilada on the
Be
5th.
filled in, which it says city.
Everything.
City council
Okay,
recommends.
but I thought we didn't get one last year. I don't,
You might.
or the public, was it on the web?
Yeah, well, you should get one that says city council recommends, and that's the one that we're going to work with. Okay,
Last year, we put 20, how much did we put into reserves? 6,200?
6470, I think it was.
Okay.
That's
So
off the
this
top
year,
of my
we're
head.
coming down, roll back minus 0.5, and we're putting 117,000 in.
That's correct.
And
Wonderful,
we've
yeah.
included those efficiencies. That's
And the
great job.
focus needs to be technology, and I would just want to make one other comment. I don't mean to take away computers from departments, but that 11,850 had to go back into the capital asset, and we want to just make sure we're prioritizing them properly.
okay, thank you very much for coming. Have a wonderful Labor Day. This workshop's adjourned. Thank you.
That was the shortest meeting ever.
Well, you guys set the groundwork. That was, yeah. I'm sorry that you